Good evening. It's great to see everyone tonight. They had warned me that camp week we would have fewer people, but as many people have said many times, thank goodness we have the sojourners here. So we still have a full class tonight, so that's excellent. If you are visiting with us, my name is Charles Plemons, and this is a study on the book of Proverbs. And I have a few of the Section 6 worksheets, if anybody needs those for tonight. There we are. Oh, you'll hand them out. Thank you. Even better. All right, let's see here. We don't have our PowerPoint up yet. Maybe that'll be coming along in a moment. So just doing a little bit of review. We are on Section 6 right now, which is talking about friends and things that Proverbs has to say about friends. And we were talking about advantages of having friends, things that friends do for one another. And as we were going along last week, we were looking at Proverbs 18:24. And I had read the New King James translation, which said, "A man who has friends must himself be friendly, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother." Then out of left field, I guess for me it'd be right field, we had this monkey wrench thrown in here of, hey, how do you account for the other translations of that verse, which talks about if you have too many companions, you can come to ruin, which sounds completely different than what I just read. And so basically I took that as a homework assignment and started looking into it and found basically some of the things that we were talking about last week, some of the things that folks had as footnotes in their Bible. So one of the key words in this passage, as we mentioned last week, is translated in a number of different ways. And one of the things that is done during translation is looking at all the context around. Well, Proverbs includes a whole lot of just various bits and pieces of information and advice, and so you don't always get the same level of context as you do in some of the other readings. And so different translators have taken that word and used the different possible meanings for it. So we end up with, whichever version you're looking at, one that says, if you seek to have friends, you must be friendly. The other is a warning of if you have too many companions, not true friends, but too many companions, then you can come to ruin. Both of these can make sense in the context of friends, right? So I had prepared to talk about this idea of if you want to be a friend, or you want to have friends, you have to be a friend. It's a two-way street. You have to be willing to make that investment. You have to do the things that are involved. But also, we have that warning, and we were talking about that also last week, of if you have too many of the wrong folks, the people who are around you for the wrong reasons, then you end up in a situation where you can come to ruin. We talked about, for example, the folks who are trying to gain friends through money. You know, if you surround yourself with all of these just companions, they're not true friends, and they're there because of what you can do for them, what you can give them, what you can buy for them. Well, how many people have gone broke just trying to buy friendship and favor and that kind of thing? So both of these, I think, have very applicable educational value for us. Which one is right? I don't know if anybody can tell us the answer to that question. Because the meaning is the same. I mean, it's both are right translations of the word. So which interpretation is right? I don't know. But I think we can learn something from either one of them. All right. Let's see here. So let's pick up then. We were talking about how to get friends, we talked about that idea of money. We were talking about having faith in the wrong person is like a bad tooth. I love that saying, having like your tooth or your foot out of joint or having a bad tooth. So how many people have come to problem or come to ruin because they have trusted the wrong person, or they've gone out of their way to put their faith in the wrong person. And then, if you will, let's turn to Proverbs 22 and verse 11. Proverbs 22 and verse 11. So the next thing that it's going to tell us about how to get friends or gain friends comes from here. So Proverbs 22 verse 11 says, "He who loves purity of heart and has grace on his lips, the king will be his friend." So it's telling us here we have to have good speech or gracious speech. It's grace on your lips. What does grace on your lips mean? How would you interpret that? Kindness. Okay, that's good. I like that. Attitude of gratitude. Okay, that plays in well to my first bullet point beneath that. What else could that mean?
Back up to Proverbs 16:13, it says, "Righteous lips are the delight of the king, and they shall love him that speaketh right."
Speaketh right. Okay, so righteous, talking righteously, talking about the right things, righteous speech. Excellent. So one of the things I've got here is this question: who likes to be around people who complain all the time? Is that really enjoyable? Not really. That's one of the ways that we can be gracious in speech. That attitude of gratitude. If you've got the right attitude, the way you speak about things, the way you're thankful for things, the way you talk about things, that is a very different connotation than somebody who is complaining or very negative. How quickly do you see the impact of negativity in a room? You can watch the light and passion and fire go out of a room in a heartbeat by one person coming in and being negative and bringing everything down. And so if we are trying to get friends, if we're trying to keep friends, one of the things that we need to remember is the way we talk about things, the way we present ourselves, this idea of righteousness, thankfulness, all of this is important. If we are going down that negative, not gracious path, that can impact our ability to gain and keep friends. It said here, the king will be his friend. So the implication here being that everyone can appreciate and respect the person who speaks gracefully, righteously, positively. All of these things are a credit to us. And as a Christian, who should be more grateful and positive and thankful than us? We have the most wonderful gifts that are available. And yet how many times do we let the world beat us down and we go down the other path of speaking very negatively and complaining and not being gracious? So sometimes we have people who only speak in this idea of gloom and doom. They don't talk about hope. We are a religion of hope. We should be talking about hope. But it's not just the spiritual hope that we have. God has promised us so many things, and God has come through for us in so many ways. We, more than anyone, should be able to talk about hope and have that aura of hope, that attitude of hope, to help us in gaining friendship. And we don't do that just to gain friendship. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we do this just for the give and take, but it's a side effect of the way we should be living and speaking and acting anyway. How many people prefer to be around those who make you feel good, who make you feel loved, who make you feel uplifted? Those are the people you seek out. If somebody just belittles you every time you're around them, do you go and seek to be near them? Generally not. You try to avoid those people. Sometimes you walk into the break room at work, for example, and you see that person coming, and you're like, oh no. If I ask what kind of day you're having, you already know the answer. It's going to be the worst day they've ever had, which is amazing because yesterday was the worst day they ever had. It's this continual, perpetual getting worse and worse and worse.
So, I also see an element for
Guilty.
Smallest little thing, they blow up and get upset and they're angry and, all of us make mistakes and do things that are irritating to others. But graciousness has the ability to say, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
No big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, and putting the right emphasis on the things that are important. There's so many little things that we could get us down and frustrate us throughout the day, throughout our lives, that in the grand scheme of things really aren't important. But there's so many people, you could probably name names if you sat here and thought about it, that they just can't get past those things. They get hung up on them. And it comes out in their attitude, it comes out in their speech. So one of the ways it's telling us here to gain friends, to be friendly, is to be gracious in our speech. And even the king, it says, would appreciate that. All right. Proverbs is also going to tell us some very important information about how to lose friends. Well, if we want to gain friends, that's a good thing, but we want to keep them. And so Proverbs is going to give us some advice on how to keep these, how to not lose friendships. So let's turn to Proverbs chapter 6. If you're following along on the worksheets or in the book, this is the How to Lose Friends slide. We're looking at Proverbs 6, and we're looking at verses 1 through 5. Proverbs 6, 1 through 5. It says, "My son, if you become surety for your friend, if you have shaken hands and pledged for a stranger, you are snared by the words of your mouth. You are taken by the words of your mouth. So do this, my son, and deliver yourself, for you've come into the hand of your friend. Go and humble yourself, plead with your friend. Give no sleep to your eyes, nor slumber to your eyelids. Deliver yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, and like a bird from the hand of the fowler." So this first reading here is talking about investments and money and friendship. And it's a warning. It's giving the advice of, if you mix money and friendship, you're putting your friendship at risk. How many times have we seen friendships collapse due to business arrangements, money, wealth, all these different things that can complicate a relationship? We're willing to do a lot of things for our friends. We're willing to forgive a lot of things. But for some people, when you put money into the equation, all of that goes out the window. And it's giving us warning here about that. Proverbs 17, verse 18. Turn over a few pages.
I'm not sure that's all about money either.
Oh, it's not just about money. Sure. Go ahead.
Well, the heading and the verse on which is dangerous promises, there's sort of two elements in here. One is, if you've given a pledge, if you made yourself assured, then you have an obligation.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a warning here about being careful about binding yourself to promises.
Sure, and we see that throughout the Bible, this idea of keeping oaths and, the danger, just be honest. Let your yes be yes, let your no be no, and we end up in these kind of legal contracts, so you might have something that's not financial, but you might have, like you say, a obligation that's not fulfilled. How many people have taken friends to court and ended up in that kind of situation too? Absolutely. All right, Proverbs 17:18 says, "A man devoid of understanding shakes hand in a pledge and becomes surety for his friend." So we put tremendous risk on our friendship when we have this idea of loaning money, becoming business partners. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't help our friends. It shouldn't give gifts to our friends, shouldn't give aid to our friends. But it's just giving us a warning. If you're going to enter into these pledges, into these financial agreements with your friends, there is risk involved. It's just trying to, again, make us worldly wise. That's what Proverbs focuses on, is how to be successful in this world in a godly way. A few verses back, Proverbs 17 and verse 9. Proverbs 17, verse 9 says, "He who covers a transgression seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates friends." So here's another way that we can lose friends in a similar context. When a friend tells you something, or you know something about a friend, there is a binding pact, an understanding there from a social standpoint, a social contract, if you will. Don't you expect, if you tell your friend something privately, that they're going to keep that private? And they have that same expectation of you. What's the warning here? Caution. Yeah, it says if you cover a transgression, you're seeking love. Okay? Let's not confuse this. Let's not say, this is not telling us, hey, go lie for your friend. This is not saying if you're called to the witness stand and you are seeking to cover up your friend's crimes or deeds, you're seeking love. That's not what it's telling us here. What it's telling us here is if your friend did something that is a problem in society or a problem with, some interaction, something personal, and they've confided in you, or you have seen it and witnessed it and you know about it, and if you are willing to spread that around and stir things up, you're going to lose that friendship. There are certain things that happen in life that we ought to just let go. Okay, so your friend did whatever. Is it that big of a deal? Is it worth telling everybody you know? Is it worth getting everybody else stirred up? Now again, there are certain things that happen in life and in the world that we need to tell other people about. But how many things get spread around the gossip channel, right? How many things do you hear people talking about that is nobody else's business? And how many friendships are impacted by that? So it's giving us this warning. He who covers a transgression. We're not talking about a crime here. We're talking about those little things that all of us do. Those things that are mistakes or might be an embarrassment. If you are not trying to spread that around, you're trying to love your friend. You're trying to protect that relationship. But if you are out there just repeating it, you can't wait to tell the next person, and I know when I tell this person, I know how they're going to react, and they're going to call 13 other people. That separates friends. If you want to lose friends, basically it's talking about gossip right here. That's what this boils down to, is gossip. So keep that confidence. Have you ever run into the situation where, I only told my closest friend, and then everybody knows? How in the world does that happen? So many of you are smirking. I think I hit a nerve right there. You tell your closest friend. Turns out maybe they're your closest friend, but you're not their closest friend. Funny how that happens sometimes, right? So if you tell just one person that you maybe shouldn't tell, you're at risk. So they tell one person. That person tells one person. That person tells one person. It's the domino effect. All right, any thoughts or comments on that? And I'm sorry we don't have the screen up. I know that's a little harder to follow along.
I think there's a theme of that in the book of James. Keep no record of wrongs.
Mm-hmm.
You pretty much have to read that. I had to read that book, and then I had to lay it down and read it again. But I think that goes along with it.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, this idea of, I'm going to pay back people that have done wrong, or I'm just going to remember. I can't forget. How many people, we have this horrible saying in society, I'll forgive you, but I won't forget. That's really kind of counter to the idea of forgiveness in a lot of ways. Now, we understand that there's a lot of truth to that too, but the way people say that and mean that a lot of times is they're really saying, I'm really not going to forgive you. I'm going to say I forgive you, but I'm going to hold just this little piece of that back. So I think you're right. Yes, sir.
First Peter 4:8, I think amplifies what is said in Proverbs 17:9. Above all things, have fervent love for one another, for love will cover a multitude of sins.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, we're not talking about criminal actions. We're talking about those various things. All of us make mistakes. All of us do things that have wronged our friends, wronged family, wronged other people. Yes, sir.
I think some of this is just plain old gossip.
Mm-hmm.
Gossip.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know that we talk enough about how damaging gossip really is. And it's so easy to fall into that trap. Some people, I think, just enjoy gossip. Some people, I think they just blurt out things to have something to say. So I have nothing interesting to talk about, but, oh, hey, so-and-so did X, Y, and Z, or did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? Nothing, unfortunately, seems to get people all interested and keyed up like gossip. We have so much other things that we could talk about, but that's what we seem to gravitate to in a lot of instances. All right, another way. Turn with me. We're going to look in Psalms now. Turn over to Psalms 41 and verse 9. Psalms 41 and verse 9. It says, even my own familiar friend, in whom I trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted up his heel against me. So another way to lose friends is to be disloyal to your friends. How difficult is it to regain trust once betrayed? For some, it's impossible. Now, again, we should have this attitude of forgive and forget, and but that's a hard thing to do. And also, we have this concept of forgiveness and repentance. There are so many people that will do things and they don't feel bad about it at all, and it's I don't know about you, I struggle a lot more trying to forgive in that scenario than in another. If you're not loyal to your friends, then you risk losing them. Bless you. And one other, I've added this one in here, negligence. This idea of going long periods of time without association or engagement. It can, not always, but it can impact friendship. And I think this is a concept that we see at the very core of humanity and our relationship with God. How often are we to come together and worship God? Weekly. Why? Why do when we observe the Lord's Supper, what are we doing? Remembering. Yeah. We don't want to neglect our relationship. We need these connections, these reminders that we have this connection. And so friendships can be the same way. Now, I know there are examples of people that they have that friend that maybe from childhood and they see each other once a year and they're still friends. Some of them are very good friends. A lot of times that's really more the exception than the rule, though. As you grow apart, you change, they change, lives change, and that friendship begins to wane. At the very least, it's probably not as strong as it was before. So if you want to lose friends, neglect your friends.
The verse here, kind of says to me, even my own familiar friend, whom I trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted up his heels against
That's intentional.
Now it's intentional, you're instant. So there's two, like the point you were making there, there's abandonment over time or
Right.
circumstance, then there's becoming an enemy.
Right.
Instinct.
Right, which are very different things. Yeah. And sometimes people react in a similar way to it. You stopped calling, you stopped writing, and they get very, very angry with that, as angry as they might have if you had betrayed them. And so, that negligence can cause a lot of hurt feelings and problems in relationships.
It's very contradictory to the old saying, that separation makes the heart grow fonder.
Mhm.
Not always true.
Right.
The length of time, I think, plays into that.
Absolutely. Length of time, and the nature of the relationship, what kind of relationship was it when it started? When you do get back together, what kind of relationship is it when you do have those moments where you're able to rekindle that friendship? Is it something that is strong and really fans that friendship further, or is it just more of a casual kind of, oh, well, there's my old friend kind of thing? There's so many variables. And again, Proverbs gives us so much advice, but we don't have a lot of black and whites. We know that it'll give us, here's some conventional wisdom, and in many cases this is true. But we also know there are edge cases, there are scenarios. Everybody's different. Everybody's circumstances are different. We're going to run into situations where you don't meet exactly what it says here. But it gives us this general advice of this is normally the case. All right, let's look at an example of friendship from Scripture. Let's look at Jonathan and David. So the Bible gives us this wonderful picture of a true friendship. We have David and Jonathan. And so turn with me over now to the book of 1 Samuel. We're going to be in this book for a while. 1 Samuel. And we're going to go to chapter 18. All right. 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 1. Let's find out what kind of friendship we're talking about here. It says, "Now when he had finished speaking to Saul, the son of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul." How close were they? They're pals. Yeah, they were very close. Blood brothers almost, if you will. They're tight, all right? It says that their soul is knit together, and he loved him as his own soul. So we're talking about a friendship that is extremely strong. So we're setting that out right out the gate. It says they were kindred spirits. Their souls were knit together. Now, what we also see is they are going to continue in this relationship, and it's going to grow stronger. So look 2 verses over, verse 3 of chapter 18. It said, "Then Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved him as his own soul." So they have bound themselves together. Now remember, we just talked about a few minutes ago the danger of these pledges and bindings and things like that. So there was a risk here involved too as well. But we have these two that are extraordinarily close together. All right, now turn over to chapter 19. 1 Samuel 19, verses 2 and 3. And so here is a prime example of how strong this friendship is, because now we have friendship and family involved in this story. It says, "So Jonathan told David, saying, 'My father Saul seeks to kill you. Therefore, please be on your guard until morning, and stay in a secret place and hide. And I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where you are, and I will speak with my father about you. That what I observe, I will tell you.'" All right, what have we learned about Jonathan at this point and his relationship to David? He's got his back. Even though his father, Saul, who is Saul in this story? The king, okay? So it's not just any old dad, okay? It's the king. And what does Saul want to do? Kill David. All right, so Jonathan is willing to put himself at risk here. He's putting himself at risk from whatever repercussions may come from his father. That could be physical, that could be social. Why? Because his abiding friendship and love for David. So he's warned him, look, my father wants to kill you. I want you to hide, and I'm going to try to help you out. I'm going to talk to my father about you. He's going out on a limb, if you will, to protect his friend. All right, turn another chapter over. 1 Samuel chapter 20. All right, we're going to look at verses 1 through 10. It says, Then David fled from Naioth in Ramah and went and said to Jonathan, What have I done? What is my iniquity? And what is my sin before your father that he seeks my life? So Jonathan said to him, By no means you shall not die. Indeed, my father will do nothing, either great or small, without first telling me. And why should my father hide this thing from me? It is not so. Then David took an oath again and said, Your father certainly knows that I have found favor in your eyes. And he has said, Do not let Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly as the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, there is but a step between me and death. So Jonathan said to David, Whatever you yourself desire, I will do it for you. And David said to Jonathan, Indeed, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king to eat. But let me go that I may hide in the field until the third day at evening. If your father misses me at all, then say, David earnestly asked permission of me that he might run over to Bethlehem, his city, for there is a yearly sacrifice there for all the family. If he says thus, it is well, your servant will be safe. But if he is very angry, be sure that evil is determined by him. Therefore you shall deal kindly with your servant, for if you brought your servant into a covenant with the Lord with you. Nevertheless, if there is iniquity in me, kill me yourself. For why should you bring me to your father? But Jonathan said, Far be it from you. For if I knew certainly that evil was determined by my father to come up upon you, then why would I not tell you? Then David said to Jonathan, Who will tell me, or what if your father answers you roughly? All right, so again, we have this wonderful example of Jonathan being willing to help David. He's basically spying, right? So Jonathan loves his father, and he's trying to make amends and peace here between his father and his friend, whom he also loves. He's trying to prevent this catastrophe from happening. He tells him, what verse was it? 4. Whatever you yourself desire, I will do it for you. What a statement. If Saul is the king, who is Jonathan? Say again? The king to be, right. The prince. Yeah, and here he's saying, whatever you ask of me, I'll do it for you. That's a big promise from someone like Jonathan. So he's willing to step out and try to help and protect his friend. Now, turn over a few verses, still in chapter 20. Let's look at verse 31. It says, For as long as the son of Jesse lives on the earth, you shall not be established, nor your kingdom. Now therefore send and bring him to me, for he shall surely die. Well, what this is talking about is Jonathan's the prince, right? But what have they figured out? Is he going to be king? Not as long as David is alive. Now, how many people would stop and think about that a minute? All right, here's my friend. I'm the prince. If my friend weren't in the picture, I'm going to become king. I'm going to have it all. I'm going to have all the wealth, all the power, all the influence. How many people would say, well, I mean, Dad wants to kill him anyway. He didn't even have to do it himself. He could just stop helping him. It would have been very easy for Jonathan to seek to become the king, to seek power. How deep was his love for David? He was giving up all of that for David. Turn over a few pages, 1 Samuel 23. We're looking at 16 through 18. 1 Samuel 23, 16 through 18. It says, Then Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David in the woods and strengthened his hand in God. And he said to him, Do not fear, for the hand of Saul my father shall not find you. You shall be king over Israel, and I shall be next to you. Even my father Saul knows that. So the two of them made a covenant before the Lord. And David stayed in the woods, and Jonathan went to his own house. All right, so I love that first verse, the way that ends. He went to David in the woods, and what? Yeah. And how? Strengthen his hand how? In God. What a friend. Here's a friend who is willing to go and strengthen and encourage in a godly way. There's a true friend, right? This is giving us an example of a wonderful friendship. Here we have someone who is willing to encourage someone and strengthen them in God. And he's admitting here, he says, don't fear, my father's not going to find you. And what does he tell him? Who's going to be king? You. If it weren't for David, who would become king? Jonathan. But he's saying, you're going to be king. And what's he say to him? What's the next bit of that passage? And I shall be next to you. What a friend. What a friend. Not only is he not jealous, not only is he not greedy, not only is he not power hungry, he's like, look, you're going to become king, and I'm going to be right there with you. How many friendships could handle that relationship? That's a tall order. This idea of humbling yourself. Give me a better example. That's amazing. You are the one. You're going to be exalted. You're going to be the king. I'll be there with you, even though it should be me. We don't see that there. He's not saying, well, I guess if it has to work out that way, maybe. No. He's saying, I know this, you know this, my father knows this. You'll be king, and I'll be with you. All right. Last slide in this chapter, or in this section. Let's turn over to 2 Samuel chapter 1. We're looking at verses 23 through 26. 2 Samuel 1, 23 through 26. It says, Saul and Jonathan were beloved and pleasant in their lives, and in their death they were not divided. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. O daughters of Israel, weep over Saul, who clothed you in scarlet with luxury, who put ornaments of gold on your apparel. How the mighty have fallen in the midst of battle. Jonathan was slain in your high places. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. You have been very pleasant to me. Your love to me was wonderful, surpassing the love of women. So here we have Saul and Jonathan who have fallen in battle. And how is David reacting here? Mourning. Absolutely. Of course he's in mourning. How strong was this relationship that they had with one another? Well, we've looked at that. I mean, it was this extraordinary bond, this almost unbelievable bond between them. And now we see, he says, how the mighty have fallen. Jonathan was slain in your high places. I am distressed for you. And he says, my brother, Jonathan, you have been very pleasant to me. There's an understatement, right? He had been wonderful to him. He says, your love to me was what? Wonderful, surpassing the love of women. So we have now this deep mourning when Jonathan passes. All right. Now, 2 Samuel chapter 9, we're not going to read that in its entirety, but that's kind of a homework assignment for you. Go ahead and read that when you get a chance. So after the death of Jonathan, we then see David taking care of his family. So continuing on, even after death, he's showing this friendship, this commitment, and showing his love for his friend. So, you want an example of friendship? Here's a great one, a wonderful example. Thoughts or comments on that before the bell rings on us? Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. All right, anything else before we head out? All right, thank you all very much. And next week we will pick up in section 7.